All right, key 9, interrupting potential affects your potential. So what if you look at this idea that the person that you really do want to marry um, is really the right person, but the person is in a process. The person could be in a process, and if you try to get with that person before they have fully processed, it's going to affect your potential. And so I want to look at this from kind of like a positive standpoint, not necessarily the typical chaotic type person. But this could be a person who has gone through a number of bad relationships, has struggled with bad decision making, and now the person needs to go through a healing process. And what happens when we look at it from a woman's point of view, we look at the person and say, okay, but I can help you. I can fix it. Let me do something, right? But the person needs to go through the process that he needs to go through. So, for instance, if you have a man who either recently divorced had or has been divorced for many years, and now he's opened his heart to somebody else. But then when he opened his heart to somebody else, that old person comes back, old either ex-husband or ex-girlfriend comes back, and it affects him. So now he's turned around emotionally, and he doesn't know how to work with the new person. And the new person is saying, "Hey, I love you. We can work this out." But the man is still struggling and doesn't want to let it go. That's when you need to let the situation go, because if his heart is divided, and no matter what you do, no matter what you say to try to convince him otherwise, his heart is still divided. That means if his heart is divided, it is divided against you. Same thing with the woman. If she's going through something and it's time for her to go through a process of healing, it is not time for you to push marriage. I remember, oh, I'm so glad I remember this. I remember my stepfather, the woman that he's married to now, initially refused his proposal. And what was going on with her at that time, her mother died, her sibling died, an uncle died, a number of people died. And so my stepfather wanted to get married right then and there. And there could have been a number of reasons why he wanted to get married. He had been single for so many years to get married, but she didn't, not because she didn't necessarily want to marry him, but because she was going through so much traumatic um and she told me it was like back to back to back to back deaths, and so she needed time apart and to heal and work through all that trauma. And he kept pushing her and pushing her, and ultimately gave her like the equivalent of an ultimatum, and she still refused. Well, instead of working through that kind of heartbreak, he goes and finds another woman, brings that woman to the church that they were both going to, and marries her in that church to make the other woman jealous. And so when I say that interrupting potential affects your potential, you interrupted her healing, the need to heal process, by then putting another stress, emotional stress on top of her, embarrassing her, no less. And then it affected your potential, because then that relationship where you married that person, that was not going to last because you used the person as a rebound. So that means you didn't. So your potential in the moment was to learn that you can't get what you want when you want it, and let's just wait. That's your potential. He ignored that. He would rather go and make her jealous, go get another woman and make her jealous, and force her to now marry him. Well, they went through their process. The one that he married, he ended up divorcing her, and then later he got back with the woman who was going through a process. But later in their marriage, some years later in their marriage, she ended up having a stroke or something like that. The pressure that you put on somebody affects them. It catches up with them. The heartache and the heartbreak and the very deliberate nature that you do with somebody, that you cause with somebody, ends up catching up with the person. And She was working hard. He couldn't work because he was on disability. And one day, out of nowhere, literally out of nowhere, she was just cooking one minute, and then after that, she ended up having a stroke. So interrupting the potential. The potential in the example that I'm giving you is the potential to rest your mind, rest your heart, all these traumatic events. Okay, let's breathe for a minute. And the potential for him was to just wait. It's going to come around. She loves you. You know she loves you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have used the woman to try to make her jealous. You know it. Just wait for a minute. So interrupting potential affects your potential. So then their relationship was a bit strained after that. You can't be happy with someone who turned around and married somebody else behind your back and used that woman to make you jealous. You can't be truly happy. You can't fully trust. There was some trust issues in their marriage, so that his game playing affected the potential for trust building. She couldn't trust him. She married him, but she couldn't trust him, right? So interrupted potential affects your potential.